Let's talk about how to deal with any people in your life who don't resonate with or relate to your spiritual awakening. Hi, I'm Saratoga Ocean, and I help people master the law of attraction, spiritually awaken, and embark on a path of ascension. And today I want to share with you the best way that you can deal with any people in your life who either don't relate to or resonate with your spiritual awakening. Now, the first thing to recognize is that a spiritual awakening represents a massive change in your identity of who you understand yourself to be or who you experience yourself to be. Now, prior to your spiritual awakening, you probably felt like most people that you are your physical body. That's who you are, that's your identity, and all of the history that your physical body has been through constitutes who you actually are. And that's the case for pretty much everyone here, right? The process of a spiritual awakening is to undergo a very profound paradigm shift in your experience to where you begin to shift away from solely believing you are your physical body to beginning to wake up inside of yourself and realizing that you in truth are an infinite spiritual being, that you are larger than this lifetime, that you are certainly more than your physical body and the sum total of all the experiences you've been through in this particular lifetime. So that's a big shift. It's actually almost like a shift in identity. It's a shift in your platform of who you feel you are, who you experience yourself to be. So the first thing to recognize when thinking about the other people in your life is that this is truly a massive change. Now, it may not happen all at once. It may be gradual because waking up can be sort of a gradual experience, right? But the more awakened that you become, the more you're going to start to feel shifts and changes in the dynamics of maybe all of your relationships. So the first thing to recognize is that your current relationships prior to your experiencing your own spiritual awakening are probably based on a mutual unspoken agreement that each party is their physical body, each party is the past history that you've shared together, and each party is the identification of the history of each of your physical body's experiences. So when you make that shift from who you experience yourself to be, you're actually shifting away from that original unspoken agreement. So it can almost feel to the other person as though something's not right with you, right? Like something's just not the way it's supposed to be. They might not be able to articulate that right away, but you might start to notice that shift in dynamics beginning to occur. Now, your ultimate goal is to feel that you have the freedom to express yourself and live authentically and be who you really are, while at the same time respecting other people's free will to be whoever they choose to be in their life. So we're going to talk about how can you find some equilibrium, how you can deal with that in the most graceful, most positive and loving way so that you can navigate those changing dynamics in your relationships with the greatest of ease that is possible. So the first step is you want to make sure that you are not judging the people who don't agree with you. And the reason for this is this takes the pressure off any need that you might feel to be defensive or to convince people that you are somehow right. It's so much easier if you approach it from a place of, I respect your will to be the person you wish to be, and I hope that you will also respect my will at the same time. In other words, you are creating your life as you see fit, but they are also creating their life as they see fit. So mutual respect is the platform that you are looking for in all of your relationships. Now, in general, there are two main types of relationships that you probably have in your life and that most people have in their lives. The first type are relationships with people who you really feel have to be in your life. That might be most likely family members or perhaps even coworkers. And the second type of relationship is probably on the level of friendships and various degrees of friendships where you have a choice whether you want to remain in that relationship or whether you want to depart from that relationship. So let's talk first about the relationships that you have more choice in, specifically relationships with friends. Now, if a friendship is going to be maintained, you really must be able to be yourself and express yourself fully and authentically. So you want to share your spiritual journey with them, but here's the key. Do not proselytize or try to convince them to feel the way that you do. They will either accept the changes in you or they won't. But you want to take the pressure off yourself. In other words, you don't want to be trying to convince them that you are right. Now, as you're sharing with your friend about the personal changes that you're going through, try to be mindful of how they're feeling. In other words, be sensitive, be intuitive. Maybe you don't want to lay it all on them all at once. Maybe you just want to talk about it a little at a time and see how they react. Keep the environment calm and peaceful. So as long as you're not judging them or trying to convince them to feel the same way that you do, you're going to have a much more relaxed conversation, and they're going to be better able to track with you in that conversation, because it's not going to feel like what you're sharing with them is somehow a confrontation to how they experience their life. And if you feel that the friendship is kind of on edge and you're not sure if the person can accept you the way you are today, but you still want to maintain a connection with that person and you want to back off a little bit, you can always frame this as a lifestyle change. You could perhaps say, and this would actually work with any relationship, because it is a lifestyle change. You're probably going to want to live a more healthy lifestyle, a more stress-free lifestyle, a more conscious lifestyle. So you can talk about it more in terms of a lifestyle change that you feel is beneficial for your overall well-being. Now, the other thing that may happen is, as a result of the changes that you are making in your own life, the two of you may no longer enjoy the same activities. You may have been doing things with this person or these people for a long time that everybody's kind of gotten used to you liking certain ways of life, certain activities that you share. Perhaps you don't really feel that way anymore. In that case, as long as you maintain that equilibrium of respect and a non-judgmental environment, you may be able to just gently drift away from those activities, but still maintain a very pleasant and mutually respectful relationship with your friends. Now, of course, you might even be surprised to find that your friend could become very curious and want to know more. Perhaps you might be their friend so that you can assist them in their own spiritual awakening. But never, never, never pressure anyone. Just let them be who they are, respect who they are, and ask that they do the same for you. Now, on the other hand, if you have a friend or friends who become extremely judgmental, critical, start to ridicule you, and they just can't accept it, they can't let it go, to them you're just crazy, you're going to have to ask yourself if this can continue to be a viable friendship for you. And in that case, you may just have to let it go. Remember, the most important thing in your life is that you feel free to express yourself authentically and to be who you really are, and expect to be respected for who you are, and you in turn will also respect others for who they choose to be as well. Now let's talk about the second type of relationships with people that you feel, at least for now, have to be in your life for one reason or another. Usually this is going to be either family members or perhaps even coworkers. So let's talk first about the subject of coworkers. Now, of course, the first thing you probably want to ask yourself is, should you really be discussing your spiritual awakening at work? Probably not in most cases, right? But let's say you're just having casual conversations with coworkers. You just want to be a lot more conscious and careful depending on the circumstance at your job or place of work. Here's what I recommend you do in that situation to help you so that you don't feel that you have to repress yourself and be somebody that you're not. Lead with your energy, not your words. Because here's what might happen. If you come across with a very positive vibration, a very loving energy, just an upbeat, positive self, when you come into a room, you're going to uplift the energy in the entire room. And oftentimes what happens is people start asking you questions like, you seem different, you seem so much happier, or you seem a lot more peaceful. What are you doing? And that opens the door for you to maybe share something you're interested in. Maybe you might say, well, I've started meditating, or I'm living a healthier lifestyle, or you want to be very sensitive. The beauty of a spiritual awakening is that it will actually increase your intuition, your intuitive senses, so that you can actually become more sensitive to other people in a very positive way. So just keep it light, keep it friendly. Think about leading with your energy, not with your words. And in that way, you will not feel that you have to be repressed and behave as though you're something that you're not. Now let's talk about the subject of family members, because this can often be one of the most difficult areas in relationships to deal with when you're undergoing a spiritual awakening. The very first thing that you have to come to terms with when it comes to family members is that you really have to not try and seek their approval for whatever changes you are experiencing. Because if you feel a need for their approval, you're instantly going to feel that you have to be on the defensive. You can easily turn this into a battle. It can turn into something where you're judging each other, and it can just go south really fast. Again, you don't want to try to convince them to feel as you do, or maybe even to feel that they have to understand what you're going through, because perhaps they can't. Remember what I said at the beginning of this video? You're undergoing a massive internal change in terms of how you perceive yourself as a being. Your family members may not be going through that change, and in most cases, they probably aren't. And at the same time, they're extremely sensitive to you and how you've always been, and they're going to sense that something's different about you. Now, because you're so closely knit as family members, the changes that you're experiencing could actually be perceived as threatening to them in some way. And this is probably even more subconscious, because they might feel like, well, wait a second, how come you're not how we've always expected you to be? How come you're so different now? And this is where you want to really focus on the subject of free will and mutual respect for each other's free will. Now, you're going to have to take responsibility for your own ability to respect their free will. So if they are determined that they just want to stay where they are, they want to be where they've always been, and they're happy in that place, you need to respect that, because they in truth are an infinite being just like you are. And you may not know the reasons why they need to spend time in that space for a longer period of time. Understand that they really aren't any different from you. They just have a different sense of themselves, and they have every right to maintain a different sense of themselves, just like you do. Now, because your relationship with family members is lifelong, right, and pretty locked in to how everyone expects you to be, I would recommend that you share your experience small bits at a time. It really depends on the nature of your relationship, how much you can and cannot share all at once. But just try to keep a balance. Let them know just by how you approach them, how you speak to them, that you respect their will, and they are probably much more likely to respect yours, because they're not going to feel that you're trying to put something over on them or lay something on them. Or most importantly, you don't want them to feel like they have to change, because that's how people feel threatened. So you want to let them know how you feel and let them be who they are without expecting them to change. And if that just feels too difficult for you, here's what I'd suggest you do. When you spend time with your family members, I would recommend that you focus on what you can be grateful for in them. Find things about them that you can appreciate. Focus on gratitude. Now, you don't have to do this outwardly or verbally, but just within yourself. Before you go to some sort of family event, perhaps you're not looking forward to that, perhaps you're thinking, I just don't know if this is going to cause conflict. Just pause and think about each of your family members and ask yourself, what are the qualities in this person that I really appreciate? What are the things about this person that I can be grateful for? And let that be in the forefront of your consciousness. That's going to completely change your energy. That's going to make them feel very comfortable with you, and it's just going to make for a much more peaceful and graceful environment overall. So once you've done your best in all of these regards, then you have to assess how you feel in this situation. If it's just overly problematic and continues to be problematic, then you probably want to back off some. And as I said, focus on gratitude and appreciation. You may want to limit the time that you spend with them. You're just going to have to feel it out. But the whole idea is you want to create a new sense of equilibrium in the relationship where everyone respects everyone else. And you know, if you do those simple things, focusing on gratitude and appreciation, over time, they may come to accept those changes in you, even if they've had a very difficult time in the beginning, because they may realize, you know what, you're still a nice person. You're not really threatening to them because you appreciate and love them as they are. And then everything may smooth out and everything will be great. And your life can go on in the most wonderful of ways with your family members. Now, if you are dealing with family members who overall are abusive or insulting, that's a problem that really doesn't have anything to do with your spiritual awakening. So that's something else that you will have to come to terms with in a whole different way. But for today, in this video, we're just going to focus on your relationships as it pertains to your spiritual awakening. Now let's talk about the most sensitive relationship of all, and that is your relationship with your significant other. Now you are going to need to have a real heart-to-heart talk with this person, and probably more than one heart-to-heart talks. In other words, don't let this be just a one-time event where you just lay this whole thing on them, but rather let it be a process. Be aware of the fact that this is not easy for them, okay? You may not be the same person that you were when the two of you got together. So be empathetic to how they probably feel, because if they don't feel the same way that you feel, you're just going to have to walk through this together at your own pace and see how things turn out. But the same principles still apply. The principles of mutual respect, where you honor their free will and their desire to be who they want to be, and also ask that they honor your free will as well. Remember that you are both infinite beings. Each one of you has a choice in terms of your journey throughout the cosmos, really, because we're all journeying through the cosmos. Now, they may not feel that way. They may feel like, hey, I'm just a person here on earth. I'm just a regular person living a regular life. Like, what the heck happened to you? That might be what their thoughts are. So you're just going to have to feel it out and be intuitive and see how things turn out. And if you take it slowly, if you're sensitive, if you're empathetic, you never know, that person might open up and start to want to know more. You might effect positive changes in them as well. You always want to make sure that you maintain that feeling of respect for their free will, as you want them to respect your free will. And basically, the two of you just need to work together to see if you can come to terms with whatever changes you are going through and stay together and still enjoy each other's company in the same way that you always have. So that pretty much covers the main types of relationships that you might find difficulty with in terms of your own spiritual awakening. Now, if you recognize that you've really blown it with someone by doing, a lot of things you shouldn't have done, maybe you just came on too strong, maybe you tried to make them change to match how you feel, or any of those things, and you recognize that, maybe I just shouldn't have laid it all on them so quickly. What you can do in that case is just back off. Just back off, let it rest for a while. You might even want to come back and apologize. You might want to say, you know what? I'm really sorry. I feel like I came on too strong with this whole experience that I'm having. And can we just start over again? Because sometimes if you just offer a fresh start, you can start off on a new foot, on the right foot, and have a vastly different, much more positive outcome. And finally, with all that said, the most important thing for you to do is to seek out like-minded people. Seek out new relationships with people that are going through the same kind of thing that you're going through. Relationships where you can feel comfortable and relaxed, and you don't have to feel, apprehensive about how they're going to take what you have to say or what you're experiencing. Seek that out, because that will take the pressure off more difficult relationships. It will just bring more ease into your entire life. So make sure that you give yourself the gift of connecting with other people who feel the way that you do already, who feel that way naturally, and who are naturally going through their own experience of spiritual awakening. So leave me a comment below and let me know if you found this helpful. Let me know if you've had any difficulties of the type that we've been discussing here, and if you think that by applying these ideas that you can have a much smoother journey with the people in your life. Just leave me a comment and let me know how you're doing in this regard. How's it going for you? How is it going with the relationships with the people in your life as you experience your spiritual awakening? So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it out with your friends, and I would be most grateful if you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you will be notified every time I post a new video, which currently is every single Friday. And with that, I'm sending you so much love, loads of positive energy, and namaste.